All right, guys, welcome back to Discovering Eden. My name is Brandon.
And I'm Jonathan.
I'm Artie.
And hey, we got a better camera again. Wouldn't you know? I didn't forget it this time.
Not a retro episode.
Unless you really want the retro back.
I like the throwback.
We'll do it every once in a while, when my mind escapes me. Anyway, we'll get into prayer, get into the bumper, and then get into the episode. Let's do it.
Dear Lord, we just thank you for this time to gather together, to nerd out on these different topics. This week, obviously, continuing our discussion on Dragons, Lord. We pray that you guide this discussion, that you lead us where you want us to go, and I lost my train of thought. We're going to end it there. Amen.
Choo-choo.
That was awkward.
And with that note, we're just going to go to the bumper. So, to give a little recap of last week, we had the Western dragons, the dragon myth. So, in short, they got some temper issues.
Yeah.
They breathe fire at your face because they're angry at you, and don't you dare take their treasure.
Yeah.
So that's to sum it up. Western dragons, Eastern dragons. Oh, look, cool! It's flying in the sky without wings. But it controls the weather and is source of good luck and power. Makes sense, right? They're totally equatable. All right, that's the end of the episode. No.
Good show.
So, obviously, there's a huge difference between Western and Eastern myth of dragons. Yet they're still called dragons. Why? I feel like that's a valid question. And honestly, well, we didn't live back then, so we don't really know, but
the creative juices weren't flowing, They just said, let's take this one.
Yeah. Hey, it's a serpent. Oh, what happened to throw it in the air?
Yeah. It's a serpent. It's not a snake because for some reason they fly and they look more ferocious.
Yeah.
So we can't call him a snake, but we'll call him a dragon. We'll call him a luong. In American terms, it's long. Sounds great. It's elongated. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. There's some localization for you.
Because that's 100% totally what they intended.
100%.
Yeah.
No, when I was saying this to Jonathan before recording too, like you picture like dragons in your mind. You have Smaug, you have things like that for like the Western, and then you have like the meme of like the three dragons, like the three heads of I'm serious.
Oh.
I'm kind of doing it, and
The
derpy
dragon. That's what I view as the Eastern dragon, kind of.
I mean, at least in the sense that it's not going to hurt you necessarily.
It's benevolent.
Yeah.
No, that dragon might be benevolent because it got dropped on its head as a child, but
no, it dropped out of the sky.
It dropped out of the sky.
It forgot to fly. It realized it didn't have wings, but then realized it could control like weather.
Yeah. It lost its flaming pearl of mystic power or whatever. And there it goes.
Also known as a Dragon Ball.
Yep.
It lost its rod and the flying cloud that it could sit on. And that's what culture does to you. So what is the culture of a Chinese dragon or anything of the Eastern dragon look like? Well, most people would think of Dragon Ball, right?
Pretty much.
Uh, even though that kind of actually resembles some of the myth of dragons, as you'll see on the Bhutan flag, because it's holding on to pearls. I wonder where the idea of Dragon Balls came from. But anyway, they're different. And something that's unique, I guess kind of unique. They're often associated with water. So it's the very nature of, say, like the Pokemon Gyarados. That's what you're looking at. The fact that it's not a dragon, I don't know, because it's quite literally what.
It's the Charizard thing all over
It's
again.
water flying. It's meant to be from water. It looks literally like a dragon. And they call it a water flying fish? I don't know what it is.
Is Gyarados flying type?
Yep, water flying.
Huh. Well, I mean,
That
teach their own, I
doesn't-
suppose.
Yeah.
That doesn't get the move fly.
Huh. For some reason, I thought it was just a water type.
That's all I was thinking too.
I'm almost a little more disappointed now.
New Mega incoming. What? It already has a Mega and it's Water Dark? Oh. Well, that doesn't fit.
Well, it's got like what, 3 megas? 2? I don't know.
The benevolent thing. Yes, we'll put a dark type on it.
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, well. Alright. Suit yourself. But, like, when I think of, like, a Chinese, or I keep saying Chinese dragon because that's always how I've kind of thought of Eastern dragons. Because Chinese zodiac, all that kind of
Kind
stuff.
of the origin of it all.
Yeah. So obviously the first thing that comes to mind for me, besides like depictions and art and everything like that, I think of Pokemon. So I think of Gyarados and I think of Rayquaza.
Yep.
As like your two. Yep. That's what I would call an Eastern dragon.
Yep.
One of them is clearly a dragon type, and one of them for some reason isn't. Because it came from a fish. Magikarp.
It's one heck of an evolution.
That's what water does to you. You kick it in the water, and all of a sudden, wow, it's angry at you and turns into a. Well, maybe that's why it's not dragon, because it's kicked off at you.
Yeah.
They're meant to be benevolent. Try to eat it, break your own teeth.
Yeah, right. Although, for what it's worth, some of the Eastern dragons aren't benevolent, so.
Yes, that is fair.
Do the non-benevolent ones not fly?
Maybe.
Because Gyarados was picked off.
Kind of brings me into mind like sea serpents.
Mhm.
So, and we'll get into more sea serpent talk at a later time as well, but especially with how intertwined water is with Eastern dragons, they're often associated with lakes, rivers, ocean, all those kind of environments, as well as being able to control the weather.
Mhm.
So, there's a lot of different sea serpent sightings, whatever, across the world, but especially like within Asia, for example, those would have technically been described as dragon. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but when I think of a sea serpent, I think of the ride at the amusement park, the sea dragon, where you go all around and love. Yep, that's what I think of. Obviously, it's not what it is. I mean, unless it is, I guess it just has its fun that way. But this is where the idea of like Leviathan and things like this come from, because and often I think what Leviathan is referred to is, or when people depict it, it's often like a dragon
Mhm.
that lives in the deep, something like that. And to me, it doesn't sound too far-fetched. Um, then you get into the whole question of, well, did it actually exist? Does it actually exist? If it did exist, is it still around? That kind of thing.
I think the answer is simply like, if it's in the ocean, who really
Yeah,
knows,
we
right?
don't know. It's the answer to a lot of things. We just don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't kick it. What inspired Gyarados?
Yeah.
I wonder.
Don't let it roar or hyper beam
No.
or whatever you want. It leaves a path of destruction.
Yeah.
We'll say. But I kind of wanted to make that little bit of a connection because I think like the next creature we'll eventually lean into after our dragons is Leviathan,
Seems fitting.
which is a pretty good segue, I think.
Yeah.
So we'll go into Leviathan after dragons, but I just kind of wanted to make that little bit of a connection so we can maybe rehash back on it later. Just because there are different things across the world that do kind of support one thing or another, but it's still shrouded in this air of mystery. Simply because we don't know. Or things that, like, especially science. Science wants, I want concrete evidence. I want things that I can see, put my hands on, get recording of, whatever.
Yeah.
Without, like, tampering or anything like that. And for things that are really, really hard to see or hard to find because we just simply don't know anything about them, good luck trying to get a hold of them.
Yep.
And it's like, we know there's things out there because we keep discovering new things every single year in the hundreds. Just in the ocean alone, mind you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, megafauna is a little bit different, but the world isn't small, so things can definitely still be out there. Kind of how we mentioned earlier in the series, there's all these different locations that are just, they're much bigger than we realize they are, especially with like the Amazon rainforest, for example. You don't really understand the full magnitude of it. I mean, you can look at a map, sure. But a map only tells you one picture.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you height, like what's the elevation, what's the like density, all that kind of stuff. Like the fact that, oh yeah, the Amazon rainforest is about the size of the continental US. And then you go, huh?
Yeah. Can't fathom that.
Most people can't even fathom the fact that the continental US is that big.
Right.
Like you look in other countries such as like Europe or Britain, for example. I've like watched reactors like react to the scale of the US, and they're like,
Those are some great videos.
wait, you can travel 5 hours and still be in the same state?
Yeah.
What?
We're out of the country at that point. Possibly two
The
countries.
longest drive you can make in Britain is like 3 hours. That's cute. Just to go to college for me, which is in the same state, like for my undergrad, yeah, it was a 5.5 hour drive.
Yep.
And imagine if I went to tech, then that'd be like double that.
I mean, it's like driving from here to the western tip of the UP is a 10-hour drive.
Yeah.
So
So, yeah, it can take some time to get across. And that's just one state. Never mind the whole country.
Yeah.
And there's some people like there's like the Appalachian Trail, for example. There's people that want to walk it, like the length of it. Yeah, that's gonna take you a couple months.
Yep.
Or spread out over several summer breaks or whatever you do. I would like to do it at some point, but that's a huge time commitment.
Oh, yeah.
I can walk the width of the Appalachian Trail, no problem. The length, it's a little bit of a different story. I say the width because I saw somebody come back with a shirt that says, I walked the width of the Appalachian Trail.
Nice.
I'm like,
Yeah, you did.
so did I. But it's just a little bit different. But yeah, so that scale of things is a little bit different. So things can still be out there.
Mhm.
Then I also wanted to touch on the zodiac. So Chinese zodiac, we'll just say it as it is. When we think of zodiac, we think of the Chinese zodiac. So, what are the 12 animals of the zodiac?
I'm a dog.
Your dog?
I'm a dog.
You got that dog in him.
What am I?
Yeah, I don't know.
Gosh, I have to look it up.
I only know because I looked today.
Yeah, I know. So did I.
Let's see.
I'm an ox, so
March, Chinese zodiac.
One of the
it's not by month. It's
What
by
is it by
year.
By year?
Yeah. 12-year cycle.
Said 1999.
So one of the fascinating things talking about the zodiac is, you know, like with the Enneagram, you've got,
Dragon?
Rabbit.
so with the Enneagram, you've got, you know, compatibility with, you know, whatever your number is. You've got, you know, good, positive, whatever, different compatibilities. So the zodiac has its own compatibility. And I was looking at that, I'm like, oh, interesting. I'm curious. So I looked at, you know, mine and Kim, my wife, what hers was. She's a horse. Yeah, I think she was a horse. Anyway, it's like the best compatibility, which we already knew anyway, but like, Dad, don't need a zodiac to tell me that. Fascinating that it worked out that way, but
Yeah. Another interesting thing is like the elements.
Mhm.
So like ox, for example, is like metal. Every time I think of it, I think of like Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's like, but metal bending isn't a thing until later. Thoth invented it. So I guess I can metal bend, if we go according to the zodiac.
I think mine was Earth. Can't remember for sure.
Couldn't tell you. I'd have to look it up.
The rabbit eats grass.
Yeah.
Good grass bend. Okay.
Earth.
Yeah. Makes sense. It eats grass, which is from the earth, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I always thought that's interesting. But of the 12 animals, well, they're actual real animals. And then the dragon.
Yeah. Which I gotta say, when I was younger, I always wanted to be a dragon. I was disappointed that I was a dog. Anytime I'd look at it, like Chinese restaurant placemats, you know, they have it on there. I'm just like, oh, I want to be a dragon though.
Hey, at least you're not a rat. But what's interesting is you see snake and dragon there, which is an interesting thing. So if you have one, you would think the other wouldn't be there if you were thinking that they were the same thing.
Yep.
But you both have snake and dragon. So it's interesting, especially when all those other animals are quite real.
Yeah.
And we know of them.
Mhm.
Tiger being one, but obviously we know the tiger is threatened, endangered, critically endangered in places. So we know we're losing it. Which means it's like, well, what if the dragon was just as real as the tiger was? We just lost the dragon.
Yeah.
Which, to me, is pretty reasonable. I mean, even you look at kind of, again, back a couple weeks when we looked at Mashushu, our good pal Mushy.
Yep.
To me, that was a very real animal. Because the other things that were depicted right alongside it were things that existed. So the fact that it's like, oh yeah, we can say, yep, those other things definitely existed, but this, nah, not so much. To me, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And even if you look at it, again, with Mushy, He's right in between Eastern and Western. And what does he have? Well, he has legs, longer legs, still that serpentine body. So similarly to the Eastern, he really serpentine, really elongated in that way. Yet has more of a stout figure for like the Western. And some of the Western dragons don't have wings. Mainly because the term dinosaur didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
So that begs the question. Well, people are claiming, especially like some scientists are like, oh, okay, so some of the fossils, people are, they're dragon bones. I'm like, scientists look at them, they're whale bones, or they could have been looking at dinosaur bones. Well, if you're saying dinosaur bones, they're the same thing, because they didn't come up with dinosaur. They came up with dragon. Mm-hmm. Dragon was something that was widely used. Dinosaur wasn't until when it was coined in like the 1800s. So it's something fascinating to me because I really do think these creatures existed. Now, whether they flew is an entirely different scenario, but around water, I could definitely see. Because, well, things need to drink water to survive. Yeah. And typically a big animal would need to get water to survive. And typically would stay around it. So, them controlling the weather, like just like in the Western, they're embellished a bit.
Yeah.
But something that I thought was interesting is like the Azure Dragon, or like in Chinese myth, the dragon. Typically controlled the weather, had the attribute of water, so used water. But was also depicted in some instances that I saw online of fire. So also had that fire element. Now, I don't know if that was kind of a mix between the two with like the Silk Road and that the information kind of passed in that way, but it's interesting. And also along the thing of the Zodiac is the Zodiac was not just a Chinese thing. It kind of was also influenced again to like Japan, Korea, Cambodia, Thailand, all those kind of things. An interesting distinction that you can see in some of the things. Now, there's different animals that take on different... They replace some of the other animals in the Zodiac, mainly to fit some of the animals that were in their areas. So, for example, I think it was either Cambodia or Thailand that replaces the pig with an elephant. So it's definitely different. It's definitely not the same animal. But another interesting one is dragon in some of them were replaced by naga.
Yep.
In some, which were serpentine human.
Mm-hmm.
So you think of like Medusa, for example, would be, well, technically like it's a Gorgon or Naga in that same kind of vein.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Definitely takes on more of a human side of it, but at the same time, dragons also did that as well. Mm-hmm. Because something that I found out when I was researching that I didn't realize is, okay, so last week we talked about Fafnir being a dwarf that turned into a dragon. It's that kind of transformation. Eastern dragons did the same thing.
Yep.
They transformed, whether it's like into a fish, they shrank, they grew, different things like that. Which is interesting that both share that characteristic and they both can be anthropomorphic in some way. Now, some of that could be attributed to, well, they were seen as like gods. So,
yep.
Of course they take on an anthropomorphic figure because, well, you have to understand it as a human.
Yeah. Well, even as the Naga, like that's being a humanoid.
The humanoid version of...
Yeah, and how many of the dragons transformed into humans, too. Like, there are some stories of that.
Just look at anime.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not the same thing
Right.
with the mythology, but boy, oh boy, did anime take and run with it.
Uh-huh.
Turned them all into cute anime girls or whatever you want. What about the awesome guys? But no. Oh, that's besides the point, obviously. But I just think it's interesting the fact that Dragon stays on there and it has Snake along with it.
Mhm.
And obviously there's the whole, I guess, the Heaven Gate I don't want to say creation story, but it's like the story of how the animals of the Zodiac were picked.
Yeah.
It was basically a big race, and the ones that finished, the first 12 to finish, congratulations, you're a part of the Zodiac.
Which the rat was the first.
Which, because he just hits
The
right on the
dragon.
well, hitched on the. Well, the dragon was helping other people,
Oh, yeah.
so
Hence the benevolence.
hence the benevolence. Had to take its sweet time, and it's like, I should probably finish now. So that's. I just find it very interesting for how the Zodiac came about. And then there's some people that say, okay, so what is the dragon? So artist depictions of it, like, okay, so you combine all the things of the Zodiac, throw them all together, and there you go, there's your dragon. I don't quite think that's how that works.
No.
Okay, do that for the cat. Or, well, I mean, the cat's not a part of it, but it is in one of them.
Yeah.
But, yeah, for the dog, for example, that would be an interesting looking dog.
Falcor.
Yeah.
It's a luck dragon. Oh, he's benevolent.
Yeah, but, yeah, and then they have, I think the Azure Dragon thing was, to be honest, I didn't really look that much into it. I didn't really have as much time as I would like, but that's the Vermilion I almost said dragon on it. Vermilion bird, which to me is the phoenix.
Yep.
You also have the black tortoise. Who knows what that is? I mean, it's a black tortoise. You have the Azure Dragon or Chimlong. And then you have the white tiger. So you have those four, and then Japanese is a little bit different. Instead of the tortoise, I think they have the yellow dragon, or something like that. Could be combining a bunch of stuff too. So, forgive me if that's what I'm doing, but it's interesting because Vermilion Bird, to me, kind of relates to the phoenix, and the phoenix is seen in several different mythologies.
Yeah. One of kind of the interesting things about that too is like the four animals represented the four directions, but not even just the four directions, but the four seas, like the north, south, east, west sea. But then also between the dragon and the phoenix, the Han Dynasty is the one that kind of consolidated the whole zodiac and then codified it, I guess, if you will.
Which is where it started as like being on the arms and different things like that, or they symbolize the emperor and the kingdom, different things like that.
And that's where the dragon symbolized the emperor, but the phoenix symbolized the empress. So, like, we've got two of the animals there being represented by emperor and empress on top of, directions. And, it's all just fascinating.
Is it bad when I think of, like, the Vermilion Bird or whatever, but then I think of, like, Shen?
Yeah.
Like, Kung Fu Panda. But he's a peacock. He was red, but for an entirely different reason. We're not going to get into yin and yang and stuff like that either, but I just, it's interesting stuff. And then this time I'm actually going to remember to actually go to my slideshow that I completely forgot to last time. But yeah, we're going to go there. So I'm going to show you some stuff that I wrote down. So let's go there real quick. If I can figure out how. Yep, that's it. All right. See you later. All right. So this is one of the flags that has dragon depicted on it. This is Bhutan. Note the Dragon Balls.
Yep.
That you can see. It definitely this is kind of how you would see dragons depicted in the East.
Yeah.
They don't have wings. They're elongated, kind of face of a lion, in that kind of vein. They're seen as protectors, benevolent, over the waters, different things, and some resided in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in like Bhutan. So this is kind of, I can't remember what exactly this is, whether it's a coin or it's on some tile thing. I don't know, but this is about the Azure Dragon. And I found this excerpt in like the American Museum of Natural History in the exhibit for like Asian dragons. I found it online. And this is kind of describing what a dragon is. And imagine yourself, you don't know what it looks like. And this is how somebody explained it to you. So bear that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So the dragon's horns resemble those of a stag. So stag being like an elk or something of that nature.
Yep.
So antlers. His head, that of a camel. And to be honest, I'm like, oh yeah, camels are still in that area.
Yeah.
Like the Gobi Desert, stuff like that. His eyes, those of a demon. His neck, that of a snake. His belly, that of a clam. His scales, those of a carp. His claws, those of an eagle. His soles, those of a tiger. His ears, those of a cow. I feel like the last one's kind of depressing a little bit. Moo. That was Chinese scholar Wang Fu in the Han Dynasty, 206 BC to AD 220. And I'm assuming that's probably the Han Dynasty, right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
So interesting because it again explains things, and to me, kind of what this kind of roundabout way of describing something is very similar to how we see like Behemoth and Leviathan mentioned in the Bible. It's in ways that people would understand, yet doesn't actually tell you what it is.
Right.
Because it's kind of hard to describe because, well, it's clearly a dragon. But people are like, but what's that? So I thought it would be like a good thing to put this in here just because if you were to say, yes, a dragon is totally something that resembles a deer, a camel, a demon, a snake, a clam, a carp, a tiger, an eagle, and a cow.
I'd say you have one crazy chimera on your hands.
You're like, what?
Full Metal Alchemist went seriously wrong here.
But it's just interesting because all these other things that, and even some of them like those of a demon, even that to us would be like, so what's that?
Right.
It's interesting to take a look at that. And then here I found like a little artist rendition of Japanese dragons or just dragons in general in the East.
Yeah.
Note that they don't have wings, really elongated. Not all of them flew, but like obviously we think of them as flying, but that's because they control the weather, different things like that. To me, they give up very much a dinosaur-ish vibe. But at the same time, I don't know if I know of any dinosaurs that look like that.
Right.
So it's interesting because I think dragons, in and of themselves, are holistically different than dinosaurs. Yet definitely probably came from the same progenitor, if you want to say that. If they were indeed real. And personally, I think dragons were real. They just aren't around anymore, in my opinion.
Yeah. So talking about the reality of dragons and that, like you know, you look at Mushushu and that depiction, and it's almost horse-like.
Yeah.
You know, his body style, which is also fascinating because when, you know, in China, you know, older Chinese records and that, when they talk about like using dragon bones for medicine and that. And when, you know, they found some fossils or whatever, it's one of them that they found was from this horse. I forget what it was called, a Perrier or something like that. That's an extinct type of horse, but it's that same.
Yeah.
It came from a horse family, but they're calling this a dragon. So, you know, it's just kind of fascinating that both the Babylonian and the Chinese, you know, the older Chinese kind of view of that is this horse-like serpentine thing. But then it morphs into this kind of, you know, flying serpentine, more mythological.
And who's to say what it actually was from
Right.
before? Because we simply don't know.
Yep.
It's just fascinating because there are definitely animals that have existed in the past that we do know of
Yep.
that had scales
Yep.
that were not reptiles, or I don't think they were. Like I think of, I mean, you see some of them in Ice Age in the movie. So like the armadillo-looking thing, or you can even say armadillos themselves have scales.
Yep.
Armadillos aren't no dragons.
No.
Be kind of interesting. You just see a little armadillo roll up into a ball, spit fire, make a fireball. But that's besides the point.
Could be a new Pokemon.
Isn't there a fire armadillo, or is it a fire anteater thing?
It's an anteater thing.
And
They do need to make an armadillo, though.
Pretty sure there's a fire armadillo in like one of the Mega Man games, but
And that you get a sneak peek into what we're talking
Yeah.
about next week, Leviathan. But we'll go back here. So you didn't see anything. And you can totally see that I totally have stuff written on it already.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the Eastern Dragon. And what we'll get into next week is kind of looking into the Book of Revelation. Again, kind of tying back into why it was often depicted as demonic and how it kind of shares that and why people kind of went after it in like the Middle Ages and so on and so forth. And why I think we don't really see these animals today. Because to me, they were hunted to extinction because of their, I guess, propensity to resemble that of the devil. To me, they were dinosaurs. At least in the West, they were dinosaurs to me. East, I'm not really sure where I fall on them.
Yeah.
Just because they're so different from anything I know. But for me, it resembles a sea serpent.
Yeah. And I think, you know, to touch on some of the myth of it a bit more and kind of, I don't know, history, if you will, with the Eastern dragons, like it seems to me like the whole Chinese aspects of it and beliefs and views of it is that they just mythologized, whatever, that, more than they were looking at the reality of it. You know, yes, there was the medicine of dragon bones, but once they got past that, it was all the benevolent gods of the sea or whatever, and you know they just went straight myths on the whole stylistically and, you know, storytelling, and they're here to serve a moral purpose in stories and, you know, your classic myths.
Yeah.
Which is also interesting that, you know, as they're typically viewed as benevolent, the ones that weren't differed from that in some way. So, like Japanese myths, Orochi was an eight-headed serpent, dragon, or whatever. But it was
Cough, cough, Hydra.
yeah,
What?
yeah, exactly. But that was viewed as like a more evil, benign, or not benign, but yeah, you know, kind of evil one for that story.
And obviously, cough, coughed Hydra there.
Mm-hmm.
You see these kind of myths and stuff, not just in the East. You see them in the West as well. Particularly with Hydra. You see that in Greek and stuff like that. So interesting stuff because you see them. The things with dragons, they're worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
So there's myth about them everywhere on the planet, not just specifically to the Silk Road or anything like that. So sure, people can share their ideas and stories, and maybe there's a little bit of the mixing going on. But you can't explain that for everywhere in the world.
Right.
So, for example, you have Quetzalcoatl. That's its own thing, completely separate. And then I guess you can make the argument it was kind of changed a little when the Spanish conquistadors came over. And when they were retelling it, kind of translated it differently. So I guess you could maybe make the argument it changed a bit to match it, but at the same time, they kind of had these way beforehand as well.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things that is universal in its depiction of they existed, or at least it's existed within legend.
Mm-hmm.
And for that to exist in legend everywhere makes me cling to it definitely existed as an actual creature. Now, as to how much it's embellished, that's a little bit different. Do I think things are going to spit fire necessarily? Not entirely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily rule it out because there are multiple things that say things spit fire. And I don't necessarily disagree, but at the same time, it could be like a burning acid or poison.
Yeah, it just feels like fire.
Yeah. Fire ants. Why are they called fire ants?
Yeah, right.
They bite your butt, your butt's on fire.
Right, it burns.
So, it's that kind of mentality. And I think you see a lot of the exaggerations in both Eastern and Western dragons. So obviously, I think this for a lot of different mythologies, especially the ones that we'll eventually talk about, especially when we get to cryptids, they're blown out of proportion from time to time, and they're exaggerated in certain aspects. So don't take them for what they are. Take them with a little bit of a grain of salt. For me, I agree that dragons existed. Whether they're different or the same as dinosaurs remains to be seen for me. Obviously, there really isn't many that we know of that are still walking around, so I can't really tell you one way or the other. But I definitely do think they existed at some point in time. And maybe why you don't see them in that quote-unquote fossil record is because they're, again, going back to some of our discussion, they had those lighter bones, especially if there were ones that actually did take flight with wings, the ones kind of like you see in the West, in Western depictions, I should say. If they did indeed fly, their bones would have been significantly lighter and would have probably crumbled to dust. So we probably would have seen them. The reason why we have some of these fossilizations of some of these birds, like Archaeopteryx, and it's not bird, but proto-bird. The reason why we see some of these things is because, well, it was basically crushed to death by a bunch of silt. It was preserved in that way.
Yeah.
So it was crushed, it just wasn't ground to a pulp. So that's why some of these things are, the most famous example of the Archaeopteryx was found in China. So it's interesting because even in Chinese mythology, there's a lot of different animals that are like, what the heck is that?
Mm-hmm.
Of all the different animals that they have in their mythology. I'm like, maybe some of them aren't as far-fetched as what we think they are, because maybe they actually existed at one point and eventually went extinct. And we just wouldn't know it. The fossil record only tells you so much because only so many things get fossilized. Most things, you aren't going to see a bloody thing.
Right.
Quite literally. So, some of the places that we know of the best, La Brea Tar Flats, for some of the Ice Age stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You have basically your zones of basically near the KT boundary, different things like that. Where cough, cough, I think a flood may have helped to preserve some of that stuff.
Right.
Global flood is also a thing that is worldwide, by the way,
Yep.
in multiple mythologies. So before you come at me in the comments,
Yeah.
that is something that existed in multiple mythologies, not just within the Bible. So, but so maybe I'm the weird geologist for thinking, I don't think the Earth is near as old as you think it is, but I also don't think it's as young as what some people claim it is.
Right.
Because is it 5,000 years old? I don't think so. I'm pretty confident it's probably not. I am somebody that takes some of the stuff in the Bible pretty literally when it comes to some of the time frames. The one where there's the difference is Genesis 1. What's the 7 days? Is it 7 actual days, 7 chunks of time? At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter.
Right.
Because who am I to say anything about that? Because for me, I believe God can make it in 7 days, or quote unquote 6, or he can make it in 7 chunks of time. Yeah. Makes no difference to me.
Either way, he created it all.
Yep.
Whether it was 6 days or Big Bang, still created it.
So I don't think millions and millions of years is accurate. I know that's kind of what the scientific everything there, and I went into geology, so I know a little bit of the background of like the dating methods that they use. They're not accurate because they rely on certain things to be consistent that just simply aren't. So they're like, yep, this is a constant, because you need some constant variable to age something.
Mm-hmm.
But what if that constant variable isn't constant? Well, then you have a problem, because then your inconsistencies show.
Yeah.
And some of these inconsistencies can, especially with uranium lead dating, which is what they use for a lot of these, they can vary for millions and millions of years at that point. So then it kind of throws everything you have out of whack. But I'll stay out of that conversation for now. Because I'm not going to go there, because people will probably complain about it in the comments. I'm not going to go there right now. But what we will do is we will wrap up this episode, and we're going to tackle the book of Revelation next week with the dragon that's depicted in the book of Revelation. And for those who kind of are thinking ahead here, you can kind of assume where we're going to go with this conversation. Kind of, again, harkening back to the Western mythology take on some of these things. And we will catch you then. So, that'll be all for this episode. Peace.
See ya.
See you later.